Okay. Good evening, board members and residents. I'd like to call to order our regular board meeting and public hearing for Monday, September 12th, 2016. I'd ask that you please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Witt, will you please take the roll call?
Yes, Mr. Battanti?
Here.
Mr. Brado?
Here.
Mr. Capral?
Here.
Mr. Tominello?
Here.
Mr. York?
Here.
Mr. Witt here, Mr. Verkust.
Here, thank you. Next is our approval of the consent agenda. Board members, we have the approval of the regular board meeting minutes of August 22nd, 2016. Approval of the bills in the amount of $2,517,484. Approval of the renewed video service local franchise agreement for AT&T of Michigan. And approval of the Lance Cruz High School 2016 homecoming parade route scheduled for October 7, 2016.
Mr. Supervisor, I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda with bills in the amount of $2,517,484.
All right, is there support?
Support.
Had a motion by Mr. Tominello, a support by Mr. York to approve the consent agenda. Discussion, board members. Is there public comment? Okay. I'll say what we do is those two chairs that we have up front are where we ask folks that are gonna make public comment to sit, so, I feel bad, I'm kicking you out of your chair. Thank you. Hearing no discussion and seeing no public comment, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries. Thank you, board. Next is our approval of the regular agenda. I don't believe there were any, changes to the agenda. If not, I'd be looking for a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
So moved.
Sir? Okay, we got a motion by Mr. York with support by Mr. Capral to approve the agenda. Discussion, board. Hearing none and seeing no public comment, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries. Thank you. Next is announcements. I do have a few. This coming Monday, a week from today, is the 4th Annual Harrison Township Economic Development Corporation Golf Outing, which will be held at Gowney Golf Club. The event is a 4-person scramble, includes dinner, and they'll have a silent auction afterward. There is information on the township's website. CARE of Southeastern Michigan is hosting a bike path ride for recovery on Saturday, September 24th from 9:30 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. The ride begins at Lake St. Clair Metro Park. There are, I believe, 3 or 4 different routes, some as short as just to the senior center and back, and one that goes all the way to Belle Isle and back. For registration and volunteer information, you can visit their website. It's www.careofsem.com. The Harrison Township Library has plenty of events. You can find information on their website, htlibrary.org. There's also links on the township's website. And of course, if you have any questions on these and you don't find it on the website, you can always call the supervisor's office, 586-466-1445. Any other announcements?
We do have one announcement from the Parks and Recreation Committee. We'll be holding our annual Hallapalooza event Saturday, October 15th at Tucker Park. Starts at 5:30 and it goes until 7 o'clock. There's games, cider, donuts. It's a trunk or treating event for younger kids. And there's no charge to participate in the event. We just ask that whoever comes to the event brings candy to pass out to the other kids.
All right.
And again, that was Saturday, October 15th, starting at 5:30.
Okay, good. Any other announcements? All right, hearing none, we'll move on to our next item on the agenda, item B1. Mr. Witt.
Yes, board. At our October 8th meeting, the board adopted resolution number 2, which set tonight as the date for our first public hearing for the repaving of Murray Street. We did post a notice twice in the Journal, and then we also mailed each owner on as appeals on the title, first-class mail of a notice of the hearing tonight. The purpose of the hearing is for individuals to speak for or against their project. The normal process is, once we open the public hearing, we'd invite individuals forward to speak. As the supervisor had stated earlier, we have the chairs up front here just to help us know if anybody else is coming up to speak. For the purpose of recording your name in the record, I'd ask that you just speak it clearly and then also give me your address, just to so I can make sure I record it properly in the minutes. So either you're speaking in favor or your objection to the project is recorded properly in the minutes.
And there is a legal reason for that as well?
Yeah, the speaking tonight against the project or having your objection recorded in the minutes, it preserves your right to appeal the assessment to the state tax tribunal.
So which is why, the reason why it is important that we make sure that anyone who might speak against the assessment identify themselves clearly so that the minutes can reflect that you were present and you did object. We ask that you try to limit your comments to 3 minutes in length, and again, we have the on-deck chairs. So anyone who wants to speak, we'd invite you up. So we'd be looking for a motion to open the first public hearing at 7:10 p.m.
Support.
Got a motion by Mr. Tominello with support by Mr. York. Discussion, board? Hearing none. I presume the public comment is for the public hearing and not on the motion. So, Mr. Witt, will you please take the roll call?
Yes, Mr. Tominello?
Yes.
Mr. York?
Yes.
Mr. Batanti?
Yes.
Mr. Brado?
Yes.
Mr. Capral?
Yes.
Mr. Witt, yes. Mr. Verkest?
Yes. So at this time, we'd invite anyone who wishes to speak for or against the project to the podium. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Dana Somerset, 24743 Murray Street. And I can't tell you how I'm looking forward to this new paved road. It needs to happen. I mean, cars go down the road and pitchers will fall. I have to anchor pitchers differently being on this street. So I would appreciate this happening as soon as possible. Tonight, will you know yea or nay?
Well, and so I'll also say, during public comment, we don't typically answer questions or engage in discussion, but we'll note your question and then answer at
Okay.
the end of the public hearing.
Yeah, I would like to know
Yep.
how long it's gonna take and when you're gonna do it, and let's get it rolling. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Dennis Cameron, 24890 Murray, and I'd just like to voice my opposition to this project at this time. We have a bad situation there, as you know, and I've pointed out to you before about the traffic, bad traffic, it's dangerous. I almost got hit going to my mailbox this past weekend. 2 trucks decided to pass right where the mailbox was, and neither one of them were giving in. So I'm not saying that the street, perhaps doesn't need it, but I don't think this is the right time to do it. I think we've got some other issues that need to be taken care of. Also, I think it presents a financial hardship, as I don't have the money to, I'm not working and on a very limited income, so I just don't have the money to pay for it. Even if you spread it out, I understand you can spread it out, but I'm having a hard struggling to pay taxes as it is. And this would just be, extreme hardship on me. So I just wish to, pose my objection and wish that you would not do it. That's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening, Ralph Piper, 24788 Murray, Harrison Township. First, I don't even know what to oppose because we were given nothing. And I heard the first person say, I can't wait for you guys to do it. You're not doing it, we are. And I don't even know what we're doing. They couldn't give us a typical drawing. They couldn't give us any specs. They said 1 out of, you use the number, 1 out of 50 pass, I guess. And that last one was a private road. We're actually taxing ourselves. Macomb County, Headley Amendment was written here, and we're taxing ourselves. and you can't even give us information what this road is gonna do. There's no drainage, there's no, driveways included, there's no ditches, there's nothing we have. So we're voting on a blank slate. That's what we adopted as a block. I know nobody here would vote for that, for this township, because it would be irresponsible. We can't even get a drawing or a specification. A typical drawing, a typical cut sheet, nothing. We vote on zero.
Thank you.
Oh, my name's John Gramlich. I live at 24698 Murray Street. I moved in a couple years ago, started a family, and I was set with what we had there with the taxes and whatnot, and mortgage payment, the whole nine. And now this is coming up, and I do object to this. I do object to this completely. I totally agree the road needs to be done. I'm not saying it doesn't, but I think this is the absolute wrong way to go about it. I think we all pay for road maintenance, and this road is not getting improved upon. It was not a dirt road or gravel road to begin with. It was an asphalt road, and we're paying to re-asphalt a road that's the county's road, as I understand. So I just want to state my objection. Thank you.
Thank you.
Susan Romanowski, 24800 Murray Street. I've lived there for about 20-plus years. I have a couple things to point out. This weekend in the newspaper, it mentioned road bill passing. It mentioned also, forget about talking about the expressways and so on, it said that Michigan counties will be receiving $804 million in 2017, up 26%, and that cities and villages will receive $459.5 million, up 25%. We can't find some of that money to pay for part of this improvement on the road besides the specific people that live on that road. I don't understand that. That's my first complaint against it. My second complaint is that why is this a special assessment? Why aren't we having a millage to improve local roads, maybe even based on this article in the newspaper about the money that supposedly villages and cities are supposed to get. In conjunction with what Mr. Piper said about there's nothing in here about like some of the improved materials besides just, tearing up the road and then relaying another piece of asphalt. So I think some investigation could be done in some better materials to use, some improved asphalts or something. And another thing is, why is the basis of the assessment on the square footage of the property? That I don't understand. The road is continuous. It's not like somebody stops in front of my house, which is in pretty good shape compared to other parts, so we could just repair the part that's really bumpy. You have some smaller lots that have much larger houses on them. Their frontage just happens to be smaller, but they have 2 cars in their driveway, or 3 or 4, just like I have 1 or 2 cars. And since my taxes are going up on my gasoline in order to pay for improvements in roads, maybe in other places of the state, why shouldn't part of that be coming back to me as a local homeowner as a deferment or a percentage of the cost of improving this road? And another thing is the traffic on this road. Granted, it's a local road, but it's not a private road. It's one of 1, 2, 3, really half of Deanhurst, which is part St. Clair Shores and part Harrison Township. But those are the only 4 streets between the expressway and 14 Mile that cut straight through to Jefferson. So of course they become major traffic routes. And so we get all the bus traffic and of course our wonderful garbage trucks. So that's why I'm opposed to the assessment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Suzanne Ametize, 24748 Murray. I am for this because it is just rattling our houses to the core. And again, just as the one woman spoke, when things fall, people sleeping, who work nights and sleep during the day are rattled out of their beds during the day. It's horrible. When we did meet previously, we did talk about the fact that the driveways would be included as part of the repaving. So I think that that's been clearly defined, and I'm not sure exactly where I saw it, but I did see it somewhere. Also, in Harrison Township, our taxes are relatively very low. You look at anywhere else. So that's why I'm for it, because I feel like our taxes are relatively low, and I think we can contribute to making our street better and making our homes worth more and just improving the area. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Kathy Lohr, 24833 Murray. I'm here to voice my opposition to this project for many of the reasons brought up previously by my neighbors, mostly quality control. I'm concerned with the drainage issues. I see no good drainage in this area, and I think we're putting a Band-Aid on a gushing wound. I agree that the road needs to be repaved. Everyone does. It's miserable. But I don't think this is the way to do it. I'm also curious about a guarantee or a warranty. Is this company going to back their project? As Ralph said, we have very little information about what they're actually going to do. I'm concerned about that. I also want to make note of, I found a road subcommittee memo and brief from April of 2014, and there are certain recommendations in here. And there was supposed to be another committee convening. I don't know if it ever did. I've only lived in the township for a few years. But it looks to me like they were recommending, and I could be wrong, looks to me like they were recommending county-wide road improvement plan. And that would require a county, or a township-wide plan. That would require a township-wide assessment and a plan to actually improve roads. I'm sure ours isn't the only bad one. I'm curious about that. I don't know if this is the place to get that answered, but I want to note it. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Thomas J. Holly Jr., 24751 Murray. I stand to speak in favor of this. I've been there since '89. The road has deteriorated to the point that, as others have mentioned, the windows and fixtures in my house rattle when traffic passes by. This is not the best answer, but it is an affordable answer, and it can be done now instead of waiting 2 years or 3 years while we study this to death. Please resurface this road. Thank you.
Thank you. We ask that everybody speak one time.
No, it still can't come up?
Yeah, that's, to give everybody an opportunity to speak.
I was just getting away from the rattling window.
Okay.
Do I have to sit down first?
No, Ralph took the seat. You can't.
My name is David Eberhart. I live at 24649 Murray. And the other meeting we had before, there was like 2 or 3 people here. And my thought was that they only gave us one plan. There was no other options. And I'd like, I used to do cement work. And every time I did cement work, I'd give the customer a view of what we were going to do, whether it was a patio or driveway or sidewalk, whatever. And there wasn't anything submitted to us. And I'd like to have something, like Ralph said, a plan to show the depth of the blacktop and the base and what they're going to use. We were told a little bit about what they're going to do, chop up the blacktop, and then the soft spots are going to do something more. But it wasn't detailed enough. I think a lot of the people here can understand detail. So I think we need a detailed plan about exactly what they're going to do. And I think it's important also, like some of the people were talking about ditches, that when you put a crown on the road, you have to deal with the ditches because they don't want the water going off the road and nowhere to go. It just lays on the side of the road. So I think more discussion needs to be, I signed the petition to do the road, But I just like to see more involvement by either the township or the county and what they plan to do, so that we can have a better understanding what to expect. But I'm for the road, but I just would like more detail, and I think, you know, with everybody working together, it should be available.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment? If there are no other public, oh, okay, all right. That's okay.
I've lived on this street. My name is Dina Bienga. I'm 24729 Murray, formerly 24779 Murray. And when I bought the first house on this street, the street was decent. It's never been really decent enough to rollerblade down the street. Since I've lived on the street, I've had 3 children. I have a handicapped mother, and every time anyone goes into my street, we have to worry about somebody falling, tripping. It's very embarrassing. I love my house. I love my neighbors. I love everything about our street, pretty much, except the frequent break-ins into trunks and things. But that's beside the point. The road it's embarrassing, it's dangerous. I've written a letter in the past, I think to Adam or somebody, and they responded that the county is pretty much responsible, and I understand that we did not pass the millage, and that's why we have to go about a special assessment. I'm in favor of a new paving. There's a lot of detail that we're not really privy. I mean, we should leave that to the contractors, the ones who actually do the work. If they do a shoddy job, then they'll be back to fix it. It's not like we can control what the contractors are gonna do anyway and choose the material. And if you're part of the road commission, then you'd be part of that contract work. But we have to trust people to do their jobs. I don't think they're gonna just pave us a bumpy road. I mean, I'd like to have my children, eldest being 18, we moved in there when she was 2, and honestly, she's never had a smooth street to ride on. So, and I haven't rollerbladed in years, and one of the reasons being the street. So, we can ride our bikes down it, but it's just really bad. And you guys don't understand that because you all drive down Murray, I'm sure. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment? Hearing none, we'd be looking for a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
And 7:25.
Support.
Got a motion by Mr. York with support by Mr. Batanti. A discussion? Hearing none, Mr. Witt, will you please take the roll call?
Mr. York?
Yes.
Mr. Batanti?
Yes.
Mr. Brado?
Yes.
Mr. Capral?
Yes.
Mr. Tominello?
Yes.
Mr. Witt? Yes. Mr. Verkust?
Yes. So we'll try to address some of the questions and clear up some of the things the best that we can. The first speaker had asked a question at the end of the meeting, is there a yay or nay? I wouldn't say that this is the end of the process, and Mr. Witt, maybe you'd better, because you handle the assessments.
Sure. As we move forward tonight, we'll adopt another set of resolutions, which will actually set another public hearing date. That's part of the process. We'll have the second public hearing, and that's for you to speak to the assessment role. We'll prepare it. It'll be available at the clerk's office, and it'll specifically give your address, your property ID, and the cost for the project that you'd be estimated to be assessed once it's completed. So at that second public hearing, which I believe we are proposing for October 11th, that would give you an opportunity to speak to that assessment. And at that meeting, once that public hearing is conducted, the board would then make the final determination to move forward with the project.
So the final decision to adopt or to move forward will be made in approximately 1 month, 4 weeks, after we would adopt, at that point, the role. So someone had indicated a financial hardship. There is a process by which those payments can be spread over a period of time. I believe.
And also for any individuals that are senior citizens and meet the income tests, or if you have a disability, there's an application that you can make. I believe it ends up first going to the treasurer's office here, What it'll do is it'll place the assessment as a lien against the property, and then that lien gets paid at the point of transfer or sale of the property. So there's a series of questions that you have to be able to answer yes to them or meet those qualifications, and that's an option available to people.
No, but that still places a financial hardship on you either way. The whole thing is a hardship. So it would be better if we could maybe table it and try to find, like one woman suggested, state or federal or county funds to help support.
Well, I'll try to address some of those, because there were some other questions or comments. Another speaker had said, indicated it's not something we're doing, it's something you're doing. You're absolutely right. This is local control at its finest. Make sure that everybody here understands, first and foremost, that road isn't our road, it's not a township road, it's a county road. I know the issue wasn't brought up, but let me address the issue of local roads and their repaving. When you think of the entire area that is Macomb County, the state sees Macomb County as either cities and villages or everything else. So the state of Michigan, through Public Act 51 of 1951, collects monies for road funding and road repairs. So we pay taxes in a variety of ways, most significantly on gasoline, but there are other registration fees, other fees that we all collectively pay. Those dollars flow to Lansing. Lansing then turns around and disperses those dollars. Cities and villages receive those dollars, and they're responsible for their own roads. Counties are responsible for any roads that aren't in a city or a village. So certainly the majority of Michigan is comprised of townships. So the counties, as the person quoted the statistic from the paper, receive the majority of dollars. Harrison Township is no different than Shelby, Macomb, Clinton, or any other township in Macomb County or in the state for that matter. There are a lot of local roads. The county doesn't currently have enough funding or receive enough funding to maintain higher level roads. So the state of Michigan divides roads into a whole series of roads. We have local roads. Those are typically like Murray Street, a road that we live on. Then you have collector roads. Those are larger roads. There's thoroughfares. There's a whole series of words that define these roads. But we understand the concept. Metro Parkway handles a certain volume of traffic. But the road that you live on or the road that I live on is generally serving the people that live on that road. There are certainly some exceptions. There are folks who live, as Mr. York does, on North Point Parkway, where you've got a thoroughfare. It is a connector road between other main roads, but it is also a residential road at 25 miles an hour. The county currently, per Public Act 51, cannot spend money on local roads unless there's matching funds. So the law prevents them from replacing your road, but they can provide matching dollars. This is, I don't know for sure, but I would have to say this is probably the 6th or 7th SAD that we've talked about in the last, just in 2016. And they're happening more and more. The fact is the county does not have those resources. Now, I don't wish to speak for the county. I've asked that question, as I'm sure my peers in every other township have asked the question. But the fact is the county does not spend any dollars on reconstructing local roads. That's not just in Harrison Township, that's true for all of the other townships. Whether I like it or not, whether I agree or not, I've been told time and again, as my peers have, that there are no dollars for local roads. So it is true, as the gentleman said, you're taxing yourselves. It is your decision. In terms of the township and our ability to fix this problem, there's only 3 taxes that you pay to Harrison Township. One is for police, one is for fire, and 1 millage is for the library that was recently approved by the voters in the last few years. So there is no other source of revenue that you give to us that we can turn around and use to spend on those roads. So we don't have those dollars available. Let me just say, it may sound odd, but if there were dollars to fix the road, I'd have fixed mine already. So you can come in on my road and see it's similar. It's pretty rough. So there's a question then. Well, what is the specifications? What is the scope of work that's going to be done? How are we going to handle drainage and driveways? Some of that I'm going to defer to the engineer to ask in terms of an explanation what that is. But I do want to say this. The road is owned by the county. This work, if you guys had $1 million and you said, we want to go out and do X, Y, and Z, it's the county's road. They have to give you permission. So they're not going to allow you to do work to that road that doesn't meet the county specifications. They're not going to allow a contractor to do the work that doesn't satisfy their needs. And the county will oversee the project. So it is certainly your dollars and it's your project if this project moves forward. It's not something we started. We didn't go to the residents of Murray Street and say, you guys need to repave your road. The residents of Murray Street came to the township, said, how can we do it? They asked to circulate a petition, and when we get a majority of people on that road who want that road repaved, it really isn't realistic for us to say, yeah, I know you guys all want the road repaved, or a majority do, but we've decided that you don't get what a majority want. The only reason that we're involved is because we have the ability through the tax process and the assessment process defined by the state of Michigan to, for lack of a better word, impose it on the folks that don't want it. So majority rules, and we're stuck kind of following those rules. But as it pertains to the actual work and how it's done, the county does oversee that process. So if you'd said, for example, we want to use 2 inches of asphalt, the county would not allow that to be done because that isn't a county standard. So there are certain specifications, and Mr. Newmer, maybe you can address in greater detail, you know, why there is or isn't drawings and what that cross-section would be, maybe to answer that question.
Sure. Members of the board, as Mr. Verkest said, this is a county road, and the specifications, the estimate that we have prepared so far was put together by the county Department of Roads. What they're proposing to do at this point is what they call a crush and reshape, where the asphalt that's there will be milled up, crushed up along with the existing gravel. It'll be laid back down as a base material, and then they would come in, they would do a 4-inch overlay of new asphalt on top of that. The project would involve blending and tapering in the driveways at the ends, because the road is gonna be raised up slightly. And so then we'll have to take and match in the driveways at the ends. We're not gonna be replacing the driveways all the way to the right-of-way line. They would just be going as far as they need to in order to match the driveways in with a decent slope. That's the scope of work that the county's put together. Now, I will say that, as Mr. Verkest indicated, this is probably the, like you said, 5th or 6th one that we've looked at here just this year. And when these requests come into the county, typically what they do is they give us what is the most cost-effective means in order to replace the surface of the road, to get the surface of the road better. Through this process, we would be reestablishing a crown, so the road wouldn't be flat or inverted anymore. It would be crowned up so that the water would sheet off to the sides. As one of the residents mentioned, if it goes off to the sides, then it has to go into the ditches, and the ditches have to go somewhere. And I understand that. But when the county puts these estimates together for us, typically they give us the most advantageous, efficient project that they can, because a lot of times, if they were to put together an estimate to fully reconstruct the road, to put in new drainage, storm sewers, catch basins, things like that, the project becomes really financially infeasible. The costs tend to go up 400 to 600% when we include full drainage or full reconstruction. And as the township has seen on previous projects, even with the level of improvement that we're talking about here, which is really a minimum level of improvement, even at this minimum level of improvement, it's difficult for people to afford these projects because they are not inexpensive. So as the first cut, the county comes back to us and says, this is kind of the base model, you know, this is the basic in order to get your road better. Redoing the road in this fashion that the county's talking about will take care of the potholes in the road. It will take care of the rattling windows and whatnot. It will give you a longer lifespan than the current pavement has. It will shed the water off to the sides. Those types of things will be encountered and taken care of. One of the people mentioned or questioned whether or not there are other options, and there are. We can go back to the Department of Roads and say, the residents want to look at drainage, the residents want to look at replacing the base, the residents want to look at curb and gutter, they want to look at storm sewer. I mean, there's a whole array of options that can be looked at, but as I said, those tend to get very expensive very quickly. But if it's the will of the board and the residents, we certainly can go back to the Department of Roads and ask those questions. So, hopefully that addresses the improvements that are to be made, and
Yep.
if there's anything else
So-
I can help with, please let me know.
To piggyback on that, one option would be to completely remove the entire road base, a much greater project, we'll say, and rebuild the road completely. The county does offer grants to pay for half of that, and they've put $2 million in their budget, just about every year. But as Mr. Newmer said, you take a $100,000 project, now you increase the cost of that project to $500,000, and they offer matching dollars for half of it. So in the end, the residents still end up having to come up with $250,000, which is less attractive than the $100,000, for example, that it might be to just shape and reconstruct the road. Now, once that project is complete, and you will see examples of this, we should probably try to maybe give some of the residents some of the roads that have gone through this. After the road is repaved, now the county will come back and do sealing, and they do maintenance. They'll continue to maintain the road, but that road has a finite life. I moved in to my home in 1990. I believe probably by 93, there's one half of the road is asphalt, one half is concrete. In 93, that road was repaved. It probably needed to be done 2-3 years ago. So it lasted about 20 years before it reached the point where it needs to be redone. So, nothing's forever. This is a, no matter what form of construction you go with, it isn't gonna last forever, but this is what the county's proposing and what this project encompasses is what's being done on numerous other streets in Harrison Township. So this isn't a unique approach or a different proposal. This is what they're doing in Clinton Township and in Shelby Township and in Harrison Township to renew.
So are you saying they're gonna seal the road every so many years?
Yep, so.
Where do we get that?
Hang on a sec. So we did close public comment, but I'm trying to answer the best I can. So the county works for you. So if you've got a pothole in your street, you call, they come out to do that. When that road is complete, asphalt is a living surface. It will crack. There will be, surface changes. So you make a call to them and say, hey, you know what, this road needs to be sealed. I mean, if we're aware of it, we can call on your behalf. They've done that with just about every local road that they've repaved. Town Hall was repaved here maybe 2010, I'm guessing. I don't remember. Maybe the one resident here remembers what year it was, but it was plus or minus right in that area. And typically, the next year, Lance Cruz from Metro Parkway to Jefferson was repaved probably 2 or 3 years ago. They came back the following year, and they seal it. When I say seal it, they do crack seals. They go through wherever there's a crack to try to prevent water from getting through and the frost damaging the base. One of the comments was we pay for road maintenance, the county should pay for it. I tried to address that. At this point, the county does not have the funding. We've asked that question too many times. Road funding is up. It's true, those dollars are likely to be spent on some of the, larger thoroughfares. Something could change. The state could choose to impose a new tax for local roads on the gasoline, and local roads could be fixed at some point in the future. There isn't a time that I'm aware of that the county was fixing local roads, so I don't expect that to happen. As it stands right now, the condition of our major roads is in a substandard condition, so I don't think dollars are coming anytime soon for local roads, but it could happen. One question was, why a special assessment, why not a millage? And there was also a comment based on looking at some notes from 2014. In fact, back in 13 and 14, we'd asked our engineer to update a study that had been done prior using PACER data from SEMCOG to take a look at all of the roads in Harrison Township and what the cost might be to address those roads. And what options were available, and certainly one of them is a special assessment, one of them is a millage. So we had a subcommittee that came back with a recommendation to the full board, and at the time, I think we looked at a 1.25 millage over a 20-year period. It's a pretty significant cost. That was the cost throughout the entire township to redo the roads and address some of those drainage issues. It was narrowly defeated, but it was defeated. So we did the research, we looked at what we thought was the best option. I can't speak for how everybody voted when they went in the booth personally, so I don't want to suggest that, but the board did put a road millage question on the ballot in 2014, and it was defeated. So, and in the meantime, as we've mentioned, on a pretty regular basis, residents in certain neighborhoods are coming in doing special assessments. Every time another road is redone by a special assessment, the likelihood that we would ever pass a township-wide millage
Right.
is lowered each time, because obviously if you say, hey, I just spent $3,000 to repave my road, I'm not voting for a road millage. You guys go fix your own darn road. So that opportunity probably came and went in 2014, and it's probably not likely, if we were to put it on the ballot, it's probably not likely to pass. One of the questions was how to assess. This comes up regularly. Should the assessment be based on the front footage, or should it be based on the lot or the parcel? Well, certainly one argument is if you have a 100-foot lot and I have a 50-foot lot, I have 2 cars and you have 2 cars, one might argue that we both use the road the same amount. Sometimes people say, well, on a dead-end road, the guy who lives at the end drives the entire road. I live at the corner, I only drive a short portion. It's a challenge to try to decide how to divide that up. And I would say that most typically, not always, but most typically, we've been doing these by the lot and not by the front footage. But that's a decision that really, you know, we try to make in conjunction with the residents. If you have a street where everybody's on 50-foot lots, it's not an issue. If you have a street where those lot sizes vary greatly, it becomes a bigger issue. We just had a road millage. Bayhaven hasn't been redone, has it?
It has been.
It has
Yeah,
been.
they're done.
So there's one example. Bayhaven is the road that's off of North River Road, just east of the base. So if you drive out toward,
Just past Macrae.
yeah, just past Macrae's. So if you drive out that way on North River Road, you can see that project, they did the same thing.
Or even
They-
closer, Riviera is probably a more similar street to yours.
Yep, Riviera also. But there's a scenario where 2 or 3 people on that street had 120 feet of footage, and the rest of them had an average of, say, 70 feet of footage. And they had originally proposed doing the assessment by the footage. The residents came in and said, look, this doesn't seem reasonable that 2 or 3 people have to pay darn near twice as much as everybody else. In the end, the board proposed a scenario where we split it equally amongst all the residents, and then based on the public input at the meeting, it seemed like that's what a majority of the residents agreed to, and the project went forward. So how that assessment's split up, the township has to make that decision, but that's really what we're gonna talk about 4 weeks from now. So we're gonna be looking for that input from the residents to say, should it be by the footage, or should it be by the lot or the parcel?
And this, just for clarification, the petitions that were circulated had a per footage basis. That's what the residents, the 54% signed off on.
Right, so that's what was proposed, that was what the language was that was brought forward. That final decision rests with the board, but, you know, this isn't my road, I'm not paying for it. I want to do what a majority of the residents on that road want. It's the reason why we don't even, Mr. Whittle hosts the meeting to talk to the residents and inform them and give them the options, but it's why we don't take this step until we get a petition with a majority of the people signing that petition, because at that point then, now we say a majority of people want this, and we move forward. The drainage, as Mr. Newmer explained, certainly by putting a crown on the road, some of the drainage issues are addressed. You know, puddling in the middle of the road, which leads to potholes and deterioration of the road, that should be fixed by replacing the crown on the road. Obviously, over time, that crown is gonna settle. Truck traffic, heavy traffic tends to move that asphalt around. So the water should shed from the street into the ditches. But if, you know, the person that, 2 doors down from you has a culvert under their driveway that's collapsed and it's just full of garbage, that's not included in this cost. And truly, it's very challenging to try to include that in the cost, because as soon as you do incorporate that, you have to look at the guy who just replaced his culvert 2 years ago and says, well, that's not fair, nobody paid for mine, I don't want someone paying for someone else's. A guarantee or a warranty, again, Mr. Newmer, I don't know how that's addressed. You know,
It's not a comment, it's just a question.
sure, sure.
Based on what you just said.
Yeah.
I'm one of very few people on the street that has no ditch. And you said that Macomb County would do what's in their specs. Would that change anything for me? You know, would they come full? I know, there's no drainage there.
I'm in the
Right,
same
right,
situation
right.
he is. I'm concerned about water coming up my driveway, so I
So,
have a
do
question.
you know what Macomb County would do
Yep,
in that
yep,
situation?
so, yeah, so let's address that, but, first, the question was the guarantee or a warranty?
The short answer is no, there is no guarantee or warranty.
Right.
That's provided with the project.
And that's true for all of these projects. It's, I mean,
Right.
really,
This-
sometimes on MDOT projects, they've talked about that, but not on the local level.
Correct. There is, if I can maybe hit one of the other questions in answering this one, there was a question about quality control. And the warranty or the guarantee that we get is through the quality control that's done by the county as the project's being constructed.
Right, so there are folks from the county out there monitoring the project, making sure the work's being done.
Monitoring the project, testing the materials,
To spec.
those types of
Correct.
things, yes.
Right. Now, with regards to the drainage, and I know the question was to Mr. Newmer, but again, once you say, all right, well, we're gonna leave the edge of that road and we're gonna start to talk about what occurs relative to drainage, as a couple of residents have mentioned, it varies. Some folks have an open drain, some have a culvert, some have nothing. So that cost scope changes greatly, and it becomes very uneven, and some might argue unfair, when someone says, well, hey, I just paid to enclose my drain, and I put in a culvert and everything works fine, and the guy right next to you says, yeah, well, my culvert collapsed and I have no interest in replacing it. So it's very difficult. Once you incorporate that cost, two things happen. One is the cost of the project goes up exponentially, and two, there's winners and losers. So the likelihood of 54% of those people continuing to agree once that cost goes up, and some people get work done and some people don't, it all but kills the project. Again, as a reference point, of the various projects that we've done like this in other neighborhoods, I can't think of one where we've addressed drainage by anything other than reshaping the road and having the road go off into the existing drains. Yeah.
And just to follow up, I mean, if it is something that the residents are interested in, maybe people will say, like, we wanna do, I mean, you guys get to control what work we do for you. The law that allows us to do a special assessment for road, would allow us to do a special assessment for drainage. Maybe it's just simple as cleaning out the existing drains, replacing collapsed culverts. Maybe somebody enclosed a culvert in an improper way, which happens a lot. And they didn't put a catch basin in there, so you have nowhere for the water to go after you enclose your thing. So there's some options for that. Usually what we find after we do the projects, though, is people see what the water does, and then they make their own individual decisions on their property, so.
So I had addressed the road subcommittee, that was one of the questions. We did form a committee, we went through that process, we went for a millage, and in the end, the voters chose to oppose it, or vote it down. Other options or ideas for construction in terms of materials. Again, you know, this is, it's certainly very personal what's in front of your home, and it's very personal when it's your check that you're writing and it's your money. But the reality is, there's not too much different about Murray Street from Bay Haven Street or Riviera Street. All of these are pretty similar projects. The roads were built all around the same time at some point in the past. They've been maintained in mostly the same way. I mean, certainly there's variances, but by and large, the county is proposing this work based on what they believe to be the best compromise between cost and lifespan. And it is, you know, it is the same thing that your neighbors 3 streets, 5 streets, 10 streets over have been asking for or have already agreed to pay for. We did address that the oversight of the project is the county. So the Department of Roads not only bids the work, but they deal with the contractor. They have inspectors there that oversee the work. The actual, one or two things that weren't asked but are worth noting, we asked for an estimate of the cost, and we try to include some cost overruns. So when we project the cost, we try to make that a conservatively high number so that in the end, the final cost doesn't come out to be something, if anything, we typically see that the final cost is lower. There's no guarantees of that, but if we miss by too low,
And I can speak from just the experience of the last two projects. On both of them, we included a 20% contingency over the budget, just to account for any of those variations in bid, and changes in asphalt. The one came in about $10,000 under price, and then the other one was $1,000 higher. So in the end, we really didn't touch that 20% contingency. So if we don't need it, we don't bill it out to you, so there could be some potential savings there over the number projected here.
Right.
So if you're gonna budget, we'd want you to budget something that, we'd rather you say, I budgeted too much than not enough.
right? And then finally, the actual assessment is based on the final and actual cost. So if this project moves forward, I don't believe there's an opportunity for it to occur in 2016.
No.
But in spring of 2017, this project would be moved forward on the county's bid list if it moves forward and it's approved. Whatever that cost is, when that project is complete and the contractor's been paid, that dollar amount would be the actual amount divided up and split out or assessed to every property owner. And that once that occurs, you have the opportunity to pay it all at once, or you can agree to spread it. I think typically we've been offering, like I talk about, a 10-year period.
Correct.
You can't spread it longer than the life of the road. The road should have a life longer than 10 years, but again, you want to be conservative. You don't want to have a scenario where someone's still paying on something, and you don't want to pay 10 years on a car that's only going to last 5 years, kind of a thing. So hopefully I addressed and answered some of those questions. Next on the agenda is Resolution 3. Mr. Witt?
Yes.
Can I ask you about the 10-year extension on the assessment?
Well, let me just say this. How about if we do this? We do have to talk about a resolution to move forward, and we'll open up the floor for public comment then. We try to avoid a scenario where we're talking back and forth, but I certainly want to answer your question, so if you're patient, we'll be opening the floor again.
Yep, before us, we have a resolution number 3, which is proposed to be adopted for the Murray Street Special Assessment District. Resolution number 3 basically determines that the board is adopting the plan and directs the township clerk, myself, to prepare an assessment roll for the project based on the estimated cost of $194,508, or a per front foot cost of $49.03.
All right, and then after that, we would have a second resolution, or I should say our
Correct.
fourth resolution, which would set the date for the public hearing.
Correct.
But before us is a motion be looking for to adopt resolution number 3, which basically establishes that and directs you to prepare the roll. Looking for a motion.
I'll make a motion to adopt foregoing resolution number 3 for the Murray Street Road Improvement SAD project as presented.
Is there support?
Support.
All right, we've got a motion by Mr. Batanti with support by Mr. Brado to direct to resolution 3, which would direct the clerk to move forward with preparing the roll. Yep, is there discussion? So we'll open the floor now for public comment. If you wish, you certainly can come forward and address any questions you have. You can come
Step
right
up.
up, yeah. We just do that if somebody's in the back, that way, there's not a lot of time, everyone gets a chance to speak, and we don't have to stay here.
At the last meeting, you mentioned this, if an assessment is done, if we go forward with this project, that the assessment would be either due in one package or over a 10-year period. And then you mentioned something, it was mentioned at that meeting that that would involve a 5% interest rate on that loan to pay this assessment. I don't understand why the township with this amount of money can't get a lower rate than 5% interest. So that's my question.
Sure, I can
think
address that.
That should be, 5% should be less than that. Okay, that's it.
My statement is we have a petition that went through, and we have a majority of the block interested in having this done. Shouldn't it just continue to move forward? That's my only question. I mean, What else is there to talk about? You got the majority. That's how this country runs.
Thank you.
I just have a little addition.
Sure.
You said this, if it did start, it would be the spring of 17. Now, the traffic on our street, it's all because of Shook Road
Shook
being
Road,
out.
yep.
Is it gonna be done by then, Shook Road? Promise?
Yep, I can
Because
address that.
that's where all the traffic is, and, people are thinking it's gonna be a highway after it's paved. Well, it would be if Shook Road doesn't get done, so, okay, thank you.
Seeing no other public comment, we'll close the floor for public comment and move back to board comment. First question was regarding an interest rate. So just as when we project a cost, we include a contingency, a 20%, which is a pretty large number. Granted, this is gonna be competitively bid, and the county will choose the lowest qualified bidder, but we don't wanna find a scenario where we give you one number only to find out later that the assessment that you were offered is higher. Likewise with interest rates. Truly, we're talking about this today, but this work won't even begin until next spring, and the assessment as it goes on your taxes will follow that. So the decision on an interest rate isn't really made today, it'll be made at some point in the future.
Our next meeting,
Right, so the.
or the October 11th, the next public hearing.
Right, right. So, and in addition to that, there are several different ways that these projects can be financed. The township can use their own general fund dollars and basically loan that money out, in which case it's an interest that the township is earning. On these projects, we have the option of going out for a bond, or most recently, the state passed an act that allows the county to serve as the bank. So the Department of Roads does have a fund balance, so they can also act as that bank. So there are a number of things we can do, and quite likely see an interest rate that's lower than 5%. The township isn't making money on the deal, so it's not as if we're saying we're arbitrarily choosing a number to try to somehow profit. But it is just a projected cost, so.
You know, if I may.
Oh, sure.
You know, one thing, if you're concerned about the interest rate, some people just get a home equity loan, pay it off at, you get a home equity loan for about 3%, 3.25% right now, pay it off, and then it becomes, tax deductible at that point too.
Sure.
Yeah, but typically, the more money that you want to borrow, the better interest rate you could get.
Sure.
That's my point.
Yeah, absolutely, and a number of 5% is a projection. The point is that whatever deal we can get, again, there's no incentive for us to somehow say, well, we're gonna charge some number greater. It isn't whatever money, whatever interest we can get on that money, that's what we would pass on.
Can you keep mentioning that there was a majority of people signed a petition.
I didn't mention that, but I'm gonna address that next.
Okay.
So part of the process is that, basically the test for us for a special assessment is a majority, which is the reason why, once residents come forward, Mr. Witt typically hosts a meeting, the residents say, yep, this is something we're interested in, we get an estimate from the county, so we've got some real dollars. His office helps to prepare that petition, and then it's really a grassroots effort. I can't speak to who might be here, but presumably some of you went out and circulated a petition and asked folks to sign this petition. And when a majority come back to what the one individual said, yeah, it would be, in my opinion, it would be chaos if we said 54% of the people want it, but we're not doing it. It doesn't work that way. No different than if 49% of the people voted yes for the road millage and we just chose to start billing you 1.25 mils. The folks voted it down. It was a much smaller margin than 54%, but in the end, that's what the people on your street decided. So to the one resident's point, yeah, for the most part, from my perspective, once the clerk says to me, I'm one board member, once the clerk says to me, he's verified that 54% of the signatures are valid and the people want the project, there is a public process we go through to make sure that we uncover any opportunity for fraud and we inform everybody of what's involved. But for the most part, yeah, the project moves ahead. I don't see that I have the right to tell 54% of the people in your neighborhood that they don't get what they asked for. It's their choice. And then finally, the question was asked about the Shook Road Bridge. The project schedule that we received indicated that construction was to begin today. I wasn't out there today to see if anybody was at the site, and they've assured me that it'll be done by the end of this year. So I don't remember what the actual
December
completion.
22nd is the projected completion.
December 22nd, good.
Now, I drove by there this morning, this afternoon, there was nobody.
Yeah.
And I know there were some welders out there last week starting some stuff, but they said they were gonna be out there in earnest this week.
Right, but the project has been bid. That was a big part of, just for whatever it's worth, a big part of the reason why the county didn't move forward is because there was a structural failure that they didn't anticipate, which caused them to need to close it. They had not applied for a federal grant, but the fact is bridges right now are paid for by 95% of the cost to replace a bridge comes from a federal grant. The county had not applied for that grant last year. They had not scheduled that bridge for its replacement until a year later, but when some steel failed, they had to close the bridge. They had to apply for that grant. They've been awarded that grant. I want to say like on a $2 million project, their total cost is something like $200,000, and $1.8 million is coming from the federal government for that. But the project has been awarded. It's gone out to bid through MDOT. The contractor's been chosen. You know, and there is a, pretty regular schedule for that bridge. And considering the fact that it's a complete closure, there aren't a lot of things to go wrong. It's not like they have to keep one lane open or deal with traffic issues. It's closed. So there's a high likelihood that the project will be completed on time and on budget.
So what was the majority of the 45 lots?
I don't know that answer. It might be something Mr. Witt might be able to tell you. Again, we're not gonna take action tonight, but.
Again, it was 54.03% of the people, of the landowner based on,
Front footage?
front footage, because, if somebody owned half the street, their vote counts a little bit more than somebody owns a little part of the street. So I don't know if I have the footage here in front of me. Yeah, we had 2,143.5 feet of the road signed in favor of a total 3,967 feet, which equal to the 54.03%.
So that's how it was calculated, because the petition was circulated as an assessment by the linear foot. And again,
2,143.5 of 3,967.
so again, no decision is being made tonight. The decisions that we're making are to direct the clerk to prepare the roll, and then the next action we're gonna take is to direct the clerk to establish a meeting 4 weeks from today here, where we're gonna discuss this, and I don't know, actually, it might be a Tuesday. Is that, that might be,
Day after Columbus Day.
Columbus Day, yeah, so it might be a Tuesday. I may have misspoken. I think the second Tuesday, the second Monday is Columbus Day. The township observes Columbus Day, so it would be that following, the next day, Tuesday. But again, there'll be a notice regarding that,
It
so.
is correct. It's
Yep.
Tuesday.
Tuesday, the 11th. Yep. So, we're making a decision right now with a motion by Mr. Batanti, with support by Mr. Brado, to adopt the foregoing resolution number 3 for Murray Street Road improvement, which is ultimately to set the roll, to prepare the roll.
Just one other
Yep.
quick comment on the clarifications. There was a statement that said the lowest qualified bidder. It's not really the lowest qualified bidder, it's the qualified bidder with the lowest price.
Right, yeah, it's kind of a misstatement there, right? Right, we're not looking for the lowest level of qualifications, but the lowest bid of those bidders that are qualified, so that's a good point. All right, any other discussion? Mr. Witt, will you please take a roll call?
Mr. Batanti?
Yes.
Mr. Brado?
Yes.
Mr. Capral?
Yes.
Mr. Tominello?
Yes.
Mr. York?
Yes.
Mr. Witt? Yes. Mr. Verkest?
Yes. And then next, we'd be looking for a motion to adopt resolution number 4 for Murray Street Road Improvement SAD project, which would set the next hearing for Tuesday, October 11th.
Correct.
So moved. Support.
Got a motion by Mr. Tominello, with support by Mr. York. Discussion?
Just one quick question.
Yep.
This will require a notice that goes to each homeowner, correct?
Correct, and then it also goes into the newspaper twice.
Okay, and then in the content of the notice, we
is
will
in the
clearly-
resolution before you.
Okay.
So that's part of what you're approving tonight that says, notice there's special assessment for these lots. Please take notice a special assessment roll has been prepared and is on file in the township clerk, and it's available for your review. It is the described improvement, the 45 lots with access to Murray, and then the estimated cost, the cost per foot. And then it says where the meeting is being held, the date of the meeting being held, and states the purpose is for reviewing the special assessment roll and hearing any objections there too. So we send that out to people. It's got the township clerk's information on it. I know a lot of people got the notice because I had a lot of questions today for the last one. It does go out to the individual as it's listed on the tax bill. So that's where it goes. And then we will post it in the journal twice in case for some reason somebody doesn't get their mail. Maybe they read their journal, they can see it there.
So this is a copy of the resolution, and I'm gonna guess, Mr. Batanti, you were asking, is there literally a listing of addresses and costs?
Not as much as I wanted to make sure that the notice clearly stated that one of the things to be discussed at that meeting is the apportionment.
The
Right.
assessment roll.
Well, that's the roll. Okay.
The roll is
literally saying this address, this much.
Right, okay. Got it.
Yep.
Thank you.
All right, fair enough. Any other questions? Hearing none, we've got a motion by Mr. Tominello, a support by Mr. York, to adopt the foregoing resolution number 4 for Murray Street Road Improvement SAD project as presented. Mr. Witt?
Mr. Tominello?
Yes.
Mr. York?
Yes.
Mr. Batanti?
Yes.
Mr. Brado?
Yes.
Mr. Capel?
Yes.
Mr. Witt? Yes. Mr. Verkest?
Yes. Thank you. So I presume there's a good chance we may see you in 29 days, so, if not sooner. Thank you. Next on our agenda is item C1 regarding Alpha 2, our favorite frontline ambulance. Chief Lopez, I know you brought this item forward and you had some additional information regarding that, so could you speak to that, please?
I can. Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Good evening, board members. Unfortunately, none of the information on item C1 is good news. I guess the good news is C2 gets better, but for C1, unfortunately, this goes back, it's hard to believe we're still talking about this repair. It goes back to the June, I believe maybe the 27th board meeting. The vehicle was already out of service and needing repair. It was sent to Rinky, and I came to the board and asked for a repair for $6,000 and some dollars, and was granted that up to $10,000 with approval of the supervisor for additional expenses. So the vehicle went in, the repair went on and resulted in me constantly calling Rinky GMC to get the status. Met with constant apologies from Rinky. And as you can see, I think the board packet included the note that I received from Mr. DeBastos at the service department. But ultimately, that repair went up to $9,162, at which point I went back to Mr. Verkest and informed him of the delay, the fact that at that point, I think we were over a month without the vehicle, and now we were going to need to utilize that money up to the $10,000 cushion. I had received Mr. Verkest's approval, gave that information to Rinky, they moved forward, and then they came back yet again and said they encountered more problems with the repair, which brought up the agenda item that you see here, which brought the cost to the $10,772 mark. I went back again with that estimate to Mr. Verkest, and I believe he consulted with Mr. Witt at that time for direction because of the amount of money involved. And the fact that the vehicle, at this point, I think we were probably 5 or 6 weeks out of service with the ambulance. And I received approval to move forward with the repair at that point. So that got us to the agenda item that's before you. The vehicle came back, was put in service, and remained in service for about 2 or 3 days, at which point we once again were using it, and it broke down on us. The vehicle was sent back to Rinky, and at that point, that brings us to the document that you have in front of you, from Ed Rinke Chevrolet, an additional estimate, and for anyone in the audience, I made additional copies and put them in the back. So at that point, we've got the estimate that now the turbocharger has, needs to be replaced on the vehicle. And in addition, there was in those previous repairs, it brought us up to the $10,000 mark. There was, the air conditioning compressor was out, which was replaced. Now came back, the air conditioning still wasn't working, and it now needs a condenser. And there's metal in the unit, it needs a condenser. So what you see before you, the item C1 was to approve the $10,772 repair, which had already been completed, and the vehicle came back. So we were, with that item, asking for the board's approval of work that had already been done with the supervisor and clerk's approval. And then also before you now is a new item. This work has not been done, because at this point, when they got this, again, went to Mr. Verkest, and we agreed last week to give Rinke a kind of stop work order until we came back to this meeting and got further direction from the board. So that's unfortunately where we are.
So a couple of things there, Chief. One was, I was doing a little bit of math here, so I missed a portion. The vehicle, I think you'd said, the vehicle did go back into service for a period of time, and during that time, the turbocharger failed.
Correct. After the completion of the full scope of work that brought us up to the $10,772 mark, the vehicle was returned to us, supposedly 100% ready to go. It went in service, and it actually, I believe, was on a call with a patient when it broke down yet again. Went back, got the estimate for $4,182.65 for the turbo and the AC condenser, and that's where we are with that repair, not yet done. It's on hold at Rinke.
Right.
And so we are still, from June 23rd, 24th, when it went out of service, went back in service for maybe 2 or 3 days, and here we are in mid-September, and it's still out of service. And we are limping by, trying, with our backup ambulance being put into frontline service, we were able to, during those 2 or 3 days where this vehicle actually got put back into service, we were able to get some emergency work done on the backup ambulance that needed to be done, so we could keep that in frontline. So that's the situation we have.
Do you have any idea how much maintenance has been done on this ambulance in the past? Just, have you ever looked it up?
I don't have a total. I could tell you that it's extensive. The vehicle was purchased in 2005. It was a demo. I was before the meeting, I was speaking with Mr. Witt. I guess the only consolation that can be made from this is that it was bought as a demo, and I believe it was around $125,000 purchase price. So I'm going to guess that you probably saved about $20,000 to $25,000 by buying the demo unit. But I can guarantee you that's all been put back into this ambulance over the years. It's not been a good ambulance. The company that made the back end is MedTech. They are out of business. It's an extremely complex vehicle. It's an air system. It came from the factory with 4 air compressors on board. So we're constantly chasing air leaks, and then when the air leaks, the compressor runs, the compressor burns out, you replace the compressor. So it came with an extremely rough ride. It had a number of, prior to me becoming chief and right after I started, there was a number of repairs that had to be done on the suspension because the guys described it as riding as if it had square tires, which wasn't really good for patient care. So it went through that. It's had the air problems. And of late, now the engine problems with the head gasket, now the turbocharger.
If I remember correctly, when we replaced, or we purchased a new ambulance, and I think you and I discussed buying the new ambulance, and we used this as the model, what not to do.
Correct.
Right, because you kind of inherited this ambulance.
It's it's a complex system. You can ask every mechanic, including the mechanics at Rinky that touches this vehicle, they have nothing good to say about it, and they usually curse me when they call me with feedback as to how the repair is going. It never seems to go smoothly, unfortunately.
So a couple of things. One was, and I apologize because I'm looking at this, and you may have an answer, and I may be asking you something that you don't have an answer for. But if I recall, well, so let me back up a step. Upon receiving this, it happened to be that a salesman, an ambulance salesman was in. Chief had looked at other options, kind of, bounced some ideas, and at the same time, if I recall, a mechanic was in, or you had a conversation with that fellow as well.
Our fleet mechanic, Michigan Fire Apparatus, was in the building doing, this is the month where we do annual maintenance on the vehicles, so he was on site, and I did consult with him.
And the reason why I ask, and you may not know the answer to this, but he had indicated that if there's one compressor but two condensers, but if there's metal in one condenser, because basically how we realized this was they ran the air, and yeah, the air worked, but it didn't work very well. So they concluded that when the previous compressor failed, that metal was circulated through the plumbing of basically the Freon lines, and so it's possible that both condensers could need to be replaced. Is that still a possibility, or was that ever clarified?
I believe it is still a possibility. The gentleman from Rinky seemed to discount that and said that it wasn't an issue. But dealing with them since June, I'm cynical at best. So.
Sure. So the options before us, certainly one is to, I guess I'll say, independent of this, the board should be aware. We've got one ambulance that I want to say is a model 2013 or 14?
13.
13. And we've got a 2003 and a 2005. So I believe, and I've indicated to the chief that I believe he needs to take a look at what options there are for replacing these, because the 2003 is currently is in service, but it is the oldest ambulance we have. This 2005 has historically been costly to own and maintain, and we have before us a cost. So you get to a certain point, you say, well, how much money are you going to, put into this ambulance? It is quite likely that in the very near future, the chief may bring forward an idea, proposal for this board to consider to replace the 2003, which would move this 2005 ambulance into a backup mode. So we may very well be looking, if this board chooses to act, we may be looking at having a 2013 and perhaps a 2017 model as our two frontline ambulances. And this 2005 may move into a backup role where it's, hopefully not in service very often. But at the times when it is, it's got to run. And certainly, the air conditioning has two areas. It has in the cab, but it also has in the back where the patient is treated. So the issue before us is how much do we put into this? I believe if we do authorize these repairs and in the near future look at replacing Alpha 3 and moving, all of them down, making this basically our third line ambulance. We may not be using this much, and it may get a little bit of a rest, and it may not be, coming back for repairs, but obviously that's.
Or somebody else's third line.
Right. Well, and I also proposed to the chief that it may be worth getting rid of Alpha 2 and Alpha 3, and maybe there's an option to buy something that's somewhere between new and as rotten as this one. But the point is that as it stands right now, we don't have a backup ambulance. So the options are to not repair it, to repair the turbocharger, or to do all of the repairs as required. And I believe if this board chooses to move forward to authorize these repairs, I think we may want to approve a number greater than the number they've given us in the event that that second condenser does need to be replaced. Our primary mechanic, who was not able to do this work at the time due to a personal injury, indicated that he believes that this ambulance has two condensers and he believes they both need to be replaced. The Rinky mechanic believes only one of them needs to be replaced. But again, in the interest of disclosure, I can't ignore the fact that the mechanic who does the majority of our work said, I think he's wrong, I think there's some additional work. The good news is there isn't $125 in tax that'll be on there, so this number comes down a little bit.
Okay, I'm ready to make a motion.
Okay?
I guess we only need $772 from the original motion. Is that the way I read this? The original motion.
Yep.
It was 10,000 is the original motion?
Correct, yeah.
Yep.
He needs an additional 772, is that correct?
That's
Because this is a little confusing with everything.
Sure.
And then the second quote, obviously, somebody's life, we need this in service. We don't have a choice. You know, unfortunately, in some of these projects, you just get into it and you're sort of stuck. As much as you like it or not, you're not just gonna say, oh, we're gonna put the ambulance out of service for a couple $1,000s. That's lunacy at this point.
And
So-
if you look at this, it's $971 over the lifespan of this. $971 a year. So,
And we got,
I mean,
you know, at some point, you know, everybody says that, you know, this ambulance is bad and whatever. You know, at some point, we could probably go back and look at the video from, somebody probably ordered this. I don't think I was on the board at that point.
You were.
Did we order this one?
Yeah, that was the demo model.
Okay, yeah, so somebody came and said this was a great ambulance, blah, 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 right? I mean, we don't know anything about ambulances, but, you know, it is what it is. So you have 4182.65, and if I'm reading this correctly, you have 393.39 and 220 for labor if you needed a second condenser.
And $30 for Freon.
Potentially
Okay,
additional
and throw
30.
good.
Yeah.
So I'll just say $650 total for that. There's
I would agree.
a few dollars leeway.
Yep.
Now I'm messed up.
I think you can round off. I mean, it's,
I'll just round it off to 4,900. So I'll make a motion that, to pay the additional $772 to Ed Rinky and to authorize the
Up to?
additional repairs, which are condenser, Freon and turbocharger, up to $4,900.
Support.
all right, so we got a motion by Mr. York with support by Mr. Tominello.
Why don't we make it $5,000 in case something, give a couple $100 cushion, just in case. Well, I don't want him to have to come back
I'll
here
support
over
your amendment.
for, you know, Freon or something.
Okay. All right, so you amended and you support the amendment of up to $5,000. Okay, discussion, board?
Yeah, is there any notion, I mean, I'm not a mechanic, but at some point, or do we call into question the capability of Rinky to do this work?
Well, so let's say this.
I don't know, I'm just
Yeah,
asking, I
yep,
don't know.
Yep, so let's say this. Certainly, we can talk about that.
Maybe not to do this.
Right.
Right,
The
but I mean,
failure of
going
the
forward.
Right. The failure of the turbocharger is something that the Rinky mechanic had indicated when the project was in. He did indicate that he thought that the turbocharger, and I believe our mechanic as well, said that turbocharger's getting on its last legs. So the failure of the turbocharger really can't be, at least in my opinion anyways, I don't believe that's the source of questionable work on the part of a mechanic. And, you know.
My concern more is not questionable work, it's timeliness of work at this point.
So I guess there are multiple factors that we might want to use to say, is there another way, is there somebody else that should be getting this work?
Well,
Maybe
normally there
not
would have
this
been.
work,
Right.
right? So we're gonna get it done, but if their past performance is any indicator, what are our options?
Right, and typically, we do have a primary mechanic that we use. He was not able to perform this work, which is what led us to go to another shop. And by the indications within the board packet, the mechanic had apologized for, you know, some of the things that they went through. He indicated, I don't know if the chief mentioned, he indicated that he has more time into the project from his perspective than what he's billed for. Once the head gasket was repaired and replaced, he was still getting error codes, and they determined through conversation with the factory that the electronic control module needed to be replaced, which is what drove this cost up. So now, let me just say, I looked at this the same way you did. the question I have leads to this. Is this fraud? I don't believe that it is,
right.
but I'm not impressed with the time that it took and the steps and, multiple things to get this solved.
And so I don't want to delay. We've talked about this a lot. All I'm saying is that maybe as a future consideration, we look for alternatives. If our in-house mechanic can't do it, are there other alternatives than Ricky, just based on delays or the way it's been performed so far? So
I think at this point, a lot's been fixed, so maybe we won't have
Maybe.
very many problems moving forward.
Hopefully not a turbocharger, compressor, head
Air
gasket.
conditioning should be working pretty well.
Right.
And,
Okay.
Mr. Supervisor, if
Yeah.
I, just to speak to Mr. Batante's point, I agree, our regular mechanic, Michigan Fire Apparatus, they do a phenomenal job. I think they're very trustworthy. Unfortunately, he was going in for surgery at the time, didn't want any kind of big projects like this. The decision we made to go with Rinky, because of how extensive of a job was, in talking with the mechanic, the wisdom was to go directly to the dealer. The person that theoretically would be most competent to work on a GMC product would be the GMC dealer. And believe me, no one is more dissatisfied than I am. There's a lot more behind the story, to the point that even with the financing, they weren't going to release the vehicle because we couldn't pay cash for it. I literally had to threaten to bring the sheriff's deputies over to get our ambulance back. It's been an unbelievable experience, and I would not go back there,
Well, and
believe
I
me.
think, thank you for that, Chief, and I guess that's part of my point, is that we want to use our primary mechanic, great, but if we have another need, maybe we need to look, there are plenty of other GMC dealerships. I guess that's, okay, thanks.
And this was recommended because of the fact that they do this kind of service.
When, for these dealerships, they refer their heavy commercial trucks to Rinky. That is the regional repair facility for the heavy commercial vehicles.
Point being that it wasn't just a random decision to choose Rinky.
Right, okay.
The chief had, in good faith, tried to choose, a dealer and the one that does primarily the heavy vehicle repairs. So there
Noted.
was some
Thank you.
thought,
Okay.
but certainly, obviously, experience is a
Right.
strong teacher.
And I don't, it's not meant to suggest. Thank you.
Any other comments? And we'll open the floor for public comment.
Bill Serville, resident. I would go further. I would say they're part jockeys. Just change the parts. But I will say this about the air conditioning. I do know a little bit about this. I used to make a living twisting wrenches. If there's metal particles in the condenser, which for people that don't know what that is, it's like the radiator out front. And those, you're talking about the evaporator. The evaporator is the part that makes it cold.
Right.
Condenser, either way, both of them are tubing with fins on it. Now, there's all kinds, if it's in the rear, there's probably 20 feet of tubing between the compressor and that evaporator. If you got metal sprayed in there, it's in those tubes. There's no reason to replace any of that stuff. They can flush it. You got $1,000 worth of parts here instead of $100 from flushing. If they don't know that, once that thing broke, they should have known that there was gonna be metal in there. When they took the compressor apart, they saw that there's no guts in the inside. They know it went there. It's a sealed system. These people are idiots. I wouldn't even have them fix this. I'd move it out of there and have it fixed somewhere else. And back charge them for the one that you did fix.
Thank you.
William Burrell, 31-year resident, new kid on the block, new breed, new deal. I would take this thing out of there, take my ball and bat and go home. When you change a compressor, you vacuum out your condenser and your evaporator. This is air conditioning and refrigeration 101. These people, you need to find another guy to go to. And if your man is sick, you put this on jacks and you go get another one. And I wouldn't let these guys play with anything of mine anymore. I wouldn't do it. Don't give them another dime. That's basic 101. You change your compressor, you clean that condenser and that evaporator. This basic stuff. very basic stuff. I wouldn't let these guys touch my bicycle. Don't throw any more money at this. I'd rather see a new ambulance, take this one, put it back together, get what you want for it, give it to the Partridge family or whatever. But don't give these people another dime, thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no other public comment, we'll close the floor for public comment and move back to board comment. Any comments, board members? Hearing none, we have a motion by Mr. York with support by Mr. Tominello to authorize the total payment of $10,772 to Ed Rinke GMC for the repair of Fire Department Ambulance Alpha 2 and up to $5,000 to perform the necessary repairs to the air conditioning and turbocharger systems on Alpha
I
2.
do have just one comment.
Okay.
You know, I mentioned back in February that, you know, it takes a year to get an ambulance. We should be ordering an ambulance. We have the money. People went out and voted for it. We said we were gonna buy new equipment. I think we need to do it. And this is just even more reason why we need to be getting that on order quickly.
Agreed, and I've asked the chief to, actually, the sales representative, had a demo model, that was a refurb. You may recall that one of the things the chief talked about is taking, what they do is they take the box off of the cab,
Yep.
they refurb the box, they order a new chassis, and they bolt the refurbished box onto a new chassis. So the chief did have, the fella actually had a demo model there. He says, hey, I'll give you a trade-in price on this. It was a pretty big step for us to come forward, and there were some issues with how it was equipped. So I did ask the chief to investigate what the cost of a new ambulance and a refurbish job would be, and to plan to bring those back before the board.
Well, we're only a year out from ordering our last one. If that one's working out, you ordered the same thing.
Well, that's, yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
they put a lot of work into doing that research on that. The last ambulance we bought, if that's working out, and I haven't heard anything bad. Maybe there is, I don't work with it every day.
We probably had
You
an
know?
hour conversation about that on Friday together, and, you know, that was sort of that we were talking
I'm
about.
not
like,
invited to those conversations.
Well, it was the state of the
so-
township, so you were invited to it, but you didn't come. And so we were talking about it there, and, you know, we had those same conversations. So the chief said, oh, do I need to form a committee? And we said the exact same thing. You know, if we have a model that works, we have the specs, go and do it again.
Right. A big part of what the committee looked at was, sometime prior to the decision to replace the ambulance, I think there were a couple of us that were at an MTA conference or something like that, and I don't remember where, but they were talking about, you know, basically heavy duty, medium duty, and light duty chassis. So a big part of what that committee looked at was, do we need a heavy duty chassis? Should we look at a light duty chassis? In the end, their decision was to say a medium duty chassis is best suited to the kind